Imagine a world where the power grid has failed. How long could you survive? It's a question that lingers in the back of our minds, isn't it? The possibility of a catastrophic grid-down event is a grim reality that we may have to face someday. It's not a case of if, but when. And the truth is, most of us are woefully unprepared for such a scenario. In today's fast-paced world, we've grown so accustomed to the luxuries that modern technology affords us that we've forgotten how to thrive without them. But what happens when those luxuries disappear overnight? How prepared are you to face a world plunged into darkness? In this video, we're going to delve into 6 critical preparations that you need to consider. These preps could be the difference between merely surviving and actually thriving in a post-grid world. So, are you ready? Now, let's dive into these 6 critical preps that could mean the difference between life and death. Scene script. First up, water. It's essential, but when the grid goes down, your tap won't work. Let's dive in. Water is the cornerstone of life. Our bodies are about 60% water, so it's no surprise that we need it to survive. However, in a grid-down scenario, the luxury of turning on a tap and having clean, potable water at your disposal could disappear in a blink. This is why it's critical to have a water purification system and a plan for water storage. There are several methods for purifying water, each with its own merits. One of the simplest and most effective is boiling. Bring your water to a boil and keep it there for at least 1 minute to kill most types of pathogens. This method, however, doesn't remove chemical pollutants, so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Next, there's the use of purification tablets or drops. These are lightweight, easy to store, and can disinfect water in about 30 minutes. They're excellent for emergency kits, but remember, they also don't remove chemical contaminants. A more comprehensive solution is a water filter. Some filters can remove bacteria, viruses, and even some chemicals. Portable filters are great for on-the-go situations, while larger, gravity-fed systems can purify gallons of water at a time, making them perfect for home use. Now let's talk storage. Ideally, you'd want to store at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for a minimum of 3 days. That's the baseline, but remember, this amount covers only basic drinking and sanitation needs. In a grid-down situation, you might need more. Consider options like water barrels for long-term storage, or collapsible water containers for mobility. And remember to store your water in a cool, dark place to prevent the growth of algae and bacteria. Water is life, and in a grid-down scenario, having a plan for its purification and storage can be the difference between life and death. So don't underestimate the importance of this critical prep. Remember, you can survive weeks without food, but only a few days without water. Next, let's talk food. How much do you have stored away? Now you might be thinking, I have a pantry full of cans and a freezer full of meat. I'm covered, right? Not exactly. When we're talking about long-term food storage for a grid-down scenario, we need to focus on shelf-stable, nutrient-dense foods that can last for years, even decades, without refrigeration. So, what are some types of these foods? Well, first off, we have canned goods. Canned fruits, vegetables, meats and beans can all last for a long time in your pantry. But remember, always check the expiration dates and rotate your supplies. Next, dried goods. These include beans, rice, pasta, oats, and dehydrated fruits and vegetables. These foods are lightweight, easy to store, and can last for years if stored properly. Then we've got preserved foods. These are things like jams, jellies, pickles, and other canned or jarred items. They're a great way to add variety to your diet. And don't forget about freeze-dried meals. These are a bit pricier, but they're incredibly long-lasting and easy to prepare. Just add water and you've got a meal ready to go. But having all this food isn't enough. You need to store it correctly to ensure its longevity. Keep your food in a cool, dry place. Make sure it's sealed tightly to prevent exposure to air, moisture, and pests. And remember to rotate your stock. Use the oldest items first, and replace them with new ones. And finally, consider your dietary needs. Do you have any allergies? Are there certain foods you can't eat? Make sure your food storage reflects your personal dietary requirements. The key to survival is not just having food, but having the right kind of food. In a grid-down scenario, pharmacies will be closed. Are you equipped with medical supplies? Now, we're not talking about a measly box of Band-Aids and some iodine. We're talking a comprehensive first aid kit that can handle anything from minor cuts to significant injuries. This kit should include items such as antiseptic wipes, various sizes of bandages, medical tape, tweezers, scissors, and a digital thermometer. A good first aid manual is also essential since the internet might not be an option. But that's not all. If you or a family member relies on prescription medication, it's crucial to have an extra supply on hand. This could be life-saving in a crisis situation where pharmacies are inaccessible. Consider other important medical supplies too, like a blood pressure monitor, glucose meter if you're diabetic, or an EpiPen if you're allergic to certain substances. Remember, these supplies are not a luxury, they're a necessity. Your health is your wealth, especially in a crisis. When the grid goes down, so does the internet and cell service. How will you communicate? It's a chilling thought, isn't it? But don't worry, we've got you covered. In the event of a catastrophic grid failure, you'll need alternative methods of communication. You see, traditional channels such as cellular networks and the internet become unreliable, if not entirely useless. That's where walkie-talkies and ham radios come into play. Walkie-talkies are excellent for short-range communications, ideal for keeping in touch with family members or neighbors within a few miles. They're simple to use, portable, and most importantly, they don't rely on any external networks. On the other hand, ham radios, or amateur radios as they're also known, can reach much farther. These devices can communicate over hundreds, even thousands of miles, making them an invaluable tool for getting updates from the outside world. Remember, preparation is key, and in times of crisis, communication can be a lifeline. We've talked about the grid going down, but what about power alternatives? Imagine a world without electricity. No lights, no heating, no refrigeration, no internet. It's not a pleasant picture, is it? That's why having a power alternative is crucial. Let's dive into some of the options you can consider. Firstly, solar panels. They harness the power of the sun, which is a renewable and abundant source of energy. You might think, well, what happens when there's no sun? Good question, that's where solar batteries come into play. They store the surplus energy produced during the day for use during the night or overcast days. It's a clean and quiet power source that can keep your essential devices running. Next, wind turbines. These machines convert the kinetic energy from the wind into electrical power. They're particularly effective in areas with consistent wind patterns, but they do have their limitations. They can be noisy, and their efficiency drops when the wind speed is either too low or too high. Lastly, let's look at generators, the old faithful of power alternatives. A generator can be a lifesaver when there's no access to the grid. Whether it's powered by gasoline, diesel, or propane, generators are reliable and can power your entire home. However, they do require fuel, which might be scarce in a grid-down situation. So, how do you choose the right power alternative? Well, it depends on your location, budget, and the amount of power you need. Solar panels are a great choice if you live in a sunny area. Wind turbines are perfect for windy locales. Generators are an excellent backup, especially if you can store enough fuel. Remember, it's not about having the most power, it's about having enough to meet your basic needs. After all, you're not trying to power a city, just your home. In the dark, the man with a flashlight is king. And with a reliable power alternative, you'll be more than just a man with a flashlight. You'll be prepared, self-sufficient, and ready for whatever comes your way. So, are you prepared for a catastrophic grid-down event? Let's recap what we've covered today. We dove into 6 critical areas of preparation, each vital in its own way. First, we explored the importance of water purification. Clean water is a non-negotiable necessity for survival, and having the means to purify water could make all the difference. Next, we delved into food storage. A well-planned, long-lasting food supply can sustain you and your loved ones when grocery stores are no longer an option. We then discussed medical supplies. In a grid-down scenario, immediate medical attention may not be readily available, making a well-stocked first aid kit essential. Our fourth point was communication equipment. Keeping in touch with the outside world and receiving important updates is vital in any crisis situation. Lastly, we examined power alternatives. When the grid fails, backup power sources become invaluable. Remember, the time to prepare is not when disaster strikes but before. Stay safe, stay prepared.